What's going on, guys? Sir Grayson here today with a video speculating how vast will the Switch's library be compared to its some of its predecessors, and what maybe what we can hope for in the next few years. So again, just to emphasize, this is a discussion piece, theorizing those kinds of things, not a video confirming any kind of factual evidence of anything at all. So with that said, let's jump into it. So to start out with, let's take a look at some of Nintendo's other mainline consoles for some ideas as to what Nintendo could do to improve the Switch's game roster before moving on to confirmed titles for the Switch. So, to start out, let's take a look at the Switch's immediate predecessor, the Wii U. Now, as you may or may not know, the Wii U, regardless of personal feelings on the subject, sold very poorly, with only 11 million units sold by the end of its lifespan. Now, it was the second worst selling Nintendo console of all time. To its credit, it did far outsell the Virtual Boy, which was the worst selling Nintendo console of all time, but it was nowhere near the GameCube, which had already sold around 26 million units by the end of its lifespan and was the third worst selling that Nintendo has ever put out. Now, with that in mind, you're probably asking yourself, what does the Wii U sales have to do with the Switch's games? Yeah? Well, it's simple. No matter what company it is, they will always want to make money. So, if a console sales do as poorly as the Wii U, chances are they'll probably change a few things up from what they were doing before. So, why did the Wii U sell so poorly? Well, in my opinion, there are three big reasons why the Wii U didn't do as well: marketing, backlash, and variety. Now, if you're a big Nintendo fan, you were probably very hyped when they announced the new console before Sony and Xbox had announced PS4 and Xbox One. However, if you are a more casual Nintendo consumer or just a casual gamer in general, you might not have even known about the Wii U, which I'm sure to some people sounds crazy, but I did know a few people when they announced the Wii U that believed it was just going to be another new attachment for their Wii. They didn't realize until well into the console's lifespan that it was in fact a new console, not an attachment for one that already existed. Now, this could partly be contributed to the fact that Nintendo didn't release at the same time as the other two big console companies, so people weren't really expecting a new console from Nintendo at that time. But you also got to throw some of the credit at the marketing team as well, since obviously the market they were trying to hit wasn't fully reached until it was too late. Now, as we can see from sales numbers, the Switch is doing far better than the Wii U. And though it hasn't outsold anything yet, if you compare these first few months of the Switch's sales to any other Nintendo console's first few months, it is the best selling. However, we'll see if it will beat the Wii U in the the Wii in the long run, to be the next best top console on the board. And this actually, believe it or not, kind of ties into the backlash thing we were talking about earlier for the Wii U. Now, the Wii was a marketing monster. It was the best-selling Nintendo console to date in terms of overall sales. However, this console did get some amount of backlash, since part of those sales were from Nintendo trying to push a large part of its marketing at the air quote soccer mom crowd. When I say soccer mom crowd, I mean, if you look back at some of the Wii Sports, Wii Fit, what was the other one? Wii Sports, Wii Fit, and Wii Play. If you look back at some of those advertisements, they're trying to push them to, maybe some moms, some girls in their early 20s, 30s, who maybe were not as into video games, trying to maybe tap into that new market. Or some, maybe overweight people trying to push out there. Maybe it could help with weight loss, which I don't know if it ever actually did for anybody. But and not only that, but all three of those games are in the top 6 selling games for the Wii, with Wii Sports being number 1 and Mario Kart Wii being number 2. And this is what caused some amount of pushback from hardcore Nintendo fans who wanted to, see games marketed at them, not at people who Nintendo was trying to dig money out of. On a side note, I do want to mention that the 3 aforementioned games were often given away with the console. So Wii Sports, Wii Fit, and Wii Play were often given away with Nintendo Wii consoles, so that probably helped their sales a little bit. But Wii Sports still sold roughly 12.5 million more units than Mario Kart Wii did. Now, with all this combined with the fading gimmick of the motion controls, people kind of getting over wanting to maybe hold a controller in their hand again, and those may or may not get their own video at some point. There was a kind of a lackluster response from people when Nintendo announced the second console in their like Wii line of products. And this is what I meant when I said backlash earlier about the Wii U. People weren't feeling it as heavily due to some of their experiences with the Wii. Now, the last thing I mentioned earlier that didn't help the Wii U much was variety. Now, when it comes to the Wii U's library, a lot of people mention how Mario is on the console so much. And while Nintendo typically has a lot of Mario on their consoles, the difference actually was not really the amount of Mario on the console. It was the fact that they didn't really fluff it out with as much other things. Which didn't keep it quite as interesting and varied for people that were not really as into Mario. If you look, there were several great non-Mario titles on the Wii U that are absolutely worth playing. Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze, the breakout hit Splatoon, a remake of Twilight Princess, a remake of Wind Waker, Pokemon, Star Fox Zero, Hyrule Warriors, Xenoblade, and several others worthy of note. But on the whole, when you compare it to its other, when you compare it to the consoles that came before it, such as GameCube or maybe the N64, both of which boasted multiple Pokemon titles, albeit not main game titles, the GameCube had multiple Star Fox titles. When I say multiple, I mean two. The aforementioned Twilight Princess and Wind Waker as well, which were original GameCube releases, although you could argue TP was really meant more for the Wii. As well as its own Four Swords title, although that game isn't quite as loved as the other two. It also had multiple Pokemon games, albeit not main game titles, but certainly not just one fighting game. Had some Metroid, some Animal Crossing, and so many other titles. In fact, if you're a Resident Evil fan, you might be interested to know that Resident Evil 0 and Resident Evil 1's first remake were both on the GameCube exclusively for a very long time. And Resident Evil 4 came out on the GameCube before it was out on the PS2, which meant that for a very, very short time, you could only play RE4 on the GameCube. Now, another thing that kind of bogged down the Wii U was a problem the Wii had as well, which was a lot of AAA, when I say AAA, I mean, very, successful selling game, big game franchises, third-party publishers. They weren't really work with Nintendo as much during this time because they had some difficulties, kind of, is it worth it to do a whole new control scheme for the motion controls? Will it even work? Will it even have a market? And then with the Wii U doing so poorly in sales, it isolated the console even further than it had been. So now we can finally bring this back around to the Switch. When we take a look at the Switch, we can very clearly see that it's made up for the Wii U's marketing failure. And has made a switch, to both a different name and a different marketing style, which has both excited and reinvigorated people's interest in Nintendo's console line, which is very evident via its sales. Now, with all that said, now that we're through all of this shit, how does this affect its game variety? Well, first of all, we can see early on Nintendo has already worked with Bethesda, Dimps, EA, and several other third-party major companies to port over major titles such as Xenoverse 2, Skyrim, sports games such as NBA 2K Jam, Rocket League, coming soon, I believe, Resident Evil, and several others. Its high sales and more stable control scheme, since you can actually, kind of mess with them and put them in the bracket holder thing that actually makes it a controller. Encourages a lot of people to work with Nintendo, with a lot of more popular third-party IPs to work with Nintendo. As this is a lot of ports that honestly should have been on the Wii U, but are on the Switch due to it being a hot item right now. Additionally, the console has made a strong statement by opening the console with a largely awaited Zelda game, that being Breath of the Wild, as they did with the Wii and Twilight Princess. Which, as we see, worked for them very, very well, considering the success the Wii had. Now adding Splatoon 2, a port of Pokken and Mario Kart 8, Mario Odyssey, and the fast-growing ARMS, as well as the promise of a Metroid, and a mainline Pokemon title. The Switch is doing extremely well for itself, after his first few months, and I expect us to see a similar type of roster growth in the future. With Nintendo having, somewhat gotten over its supply issues with the amount of consoles it has to sell, and its extremely expanding market due to the variety of games it's releasing, I think we can expect to see a lot of major third-party releases on the console. As well as a possibility of maybe seeing some of our old favorites make their way to the Switch as well. Considering Nintendo has been willing to do that with other titles being either ported or remade, both on the Wii U and 3DS quite frequently. So, whatever happens, the future of this console, as far as I'm concerned, looks very promising. But only time will tell until then. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, be sure to leave a like and subscribe for more Nintendo-related content next week. Until then, peace and enjoy your video games.